Welcome classic rock fans to a classic rock hypothetical. One of course that's been inspired by the deluge of responses beneath my 10 best double albums video. Of course in that video I ranked the Beatles' White Album as being pretty close to the top of my list, which has prompted a lot of you to say that they feel that this is quite a flabby, bloated album that would in fact be a much better single album. However, this is not a view that I concur with. I agree that this album is a baggy, ramshackle affair in many respects, but to me that contributes to its overall disjointed charm. I love the starkness and the honesty of this record. It's unblemished, untarnished, which is beautifully represented, of course, by the cover for an album which, ironically, is very much tarnished in some respects by the horrible circumstances that surround it. Of course, I'm referring to those events that helter-skeltered out of control and resulted in the death of Sharon Tate and others. And by contrast, of course, the starkness of this album is particularly interesting, especially when juxtaposed against the swirling psychedelia of the previous two albums. So if we return to my classic rock hypothetical, my classic rock La La Land, if you like, and you were commissioned to take a pair of scissors to this sacred cow of an album, where would you begin? What would you jettison? Then, of course, you'd have to think about sequencing. How would you arrange the pieces on the chessboard? You can't have all McCartney's acoustic bits on one side and all the rockier numbers on another side. It would create a kind of an imbalance, wouldn't it? You want something that would flow and provide the listener with a greater and better overall aesthetic experience. And also, you've got to think about running time. You can't be too greedy with the tracks because vinyl did have its limitations. So, I thought we'd have some fun with this and try to reimagine, no pun intended, how this album might look if it were trimmed down to two sides of vinyl. Well, to start off with, I would begin with Back in the USSR. Nothing would change there. It's a wonderful opener to this album, and it's a brilliant song as well. I really do. I love that homage to the Beach Boys and Chuck Berry, partly inspired, of course, by Chuck Berry's Back in the USA. And I love the way it juxtaposes the decadence of rock and roll and perhaps that West Coast aesthetic as well, with the dour and frosty perception of the Soviet Union at the time. I think it's a work of genius. Apparently it was a song that was inspired by Mike Love suggesting they should do something like Back in the USR, very much in the style of Chuck Berry's Back in the USA. But it's a wonderful opener to a real powerful statement to open this album. And then that would segue, as it does now, straight into Dear Prudence and those beautiful jangly valedictory guitar chimes. One of the most beautiful songs Lennon ever wrote with the Beatles, in my opinion. It's a song inspired by Prudence Farrow, who was the younger sister of Mia Farrow, who I think they accompanied them on the Beatles trip to India. Of course, Mia Farrow at the time was going through a divorce with her then husband, Frank Sinatra. But definitely I would keep that as it is, Back in the USR, Dear Prudence. Then I'd go straight into While My Guitar Gently Weeps, arguably with perhaps the most beautiful song that George Harrison has ever written. You've got a descent in mood here, haven't you? You've got the Furore, which is Back in the USSR, then you've got the very melancholic valedictory tones of Dear Prudence, and then this one, of course, which is another somber one, a song inspired by a line from the Chinese Book of Changes, a book on I Ching. So bearing that in mind, in terms of sequencing, I would then go for a track that would add some vibrancy and lift things up a bit. And I've chosen Everybody's Got Something to Hide, except for Me and My Monkey. I love the pace of this number. It's a high-octane, spiky retort to the British press from John Lennon, of course, but I think it's a great one here just to mix things up a bit. I'll then go into Happiness is a Warm Gun, a song inspired by a magazine cover where it suggested that you could conflate happiness with shooting stuff. I think John Lennon found this rather odd, and obviously that was what inspired him to write the song. So we've gone from a rock and roll number to a couple of numbers that might be considered to be somewhat melancholic, to one that has a very spiky, high-paced invective to it. Everybody's Got Something to Hide, of course. Then to the distinctly quirky, I think Happiness is a Warm Gun. I would then go straight to Honey Pie by Paul McCartney. I love this music hall pastiche, and I think it lightens the mood overall. I think one critic described it as having a specifically English fruity quality. It's certainly a song that's reminiscent of When I'm 64. I would then go to Piggies, another Harrison Penn number, one of my favourites on the album, one that critiques social class and has something of the Orwellian beast fable about it, but it's definitely would fit in nicely here. And I would round this side off with another high octane number. I'd go for Birthday, which I just think it's a great number to end on, very much reminiscent of the tone perhaps of the opening number. So that side, so with those songs, that side would come in at 22 minutes and 2 seconds. Side 2 would start off with another great opener. I'd go with Helter Skelter, a powerful, pulsating number described by Pete Townsend as the dirtiest thing they've ever done. It's a real roller coaster of a ride, to stick with the fairground metaphor of a number to open any album with. I would then go straight into Your Blues, which is another gritty number described by NME as hard, solid stuff, not without humour. I would then look to soften the overall tone of the album a little bit. I'd go for I Will, a very short number by Paul McCartney, one that he wrote with the help of Donovan, I believe. But it's a nice, gentle ditty described by Melody Maker as McCartney at his sweet best, but it kind of prepares the ground for the next number. I would then launch into Blackbird, a song that is... there are two stories surrounding this. Some have suggested that it was inspired by Paul McCartney hearing a bird singing in his garden, but I prefer the more socio-political interpretation. The race riots going on in the USA, the assassination of Martin Luther King. When I saw him live, he said very much that this was a song about race and gender, and the need to live a free and unrestrained life. The next track would be Revolution 1, another rocky number that takes us away from the soft acoustic phrasings of the previous two numbers, mixes things up a bit. And then I go straight into Rocky Raccoon after that, which is another silly number, a number I really, really enjoy as well. These songs all add flavour and texture to this record. I would then look to close the proceedings by another piece of McCartney pastoral whimsy in the acoustic phrasings of Mother Nature's Son, a song inspired by a lecture given by the Maharishi on nature. And then to bring everything to a close, I would just end with a silly bit of sonic soundscaping in the guise of Wild Honey Pie. And therefore, this side would come in at 22 minutes and 43 seconds. We could omit Wild Honey Pie if you felt we needed to shave a little bit off it, but so that's how I would reconfigure this wonderful, wonderful double album to a wonderful, wonderful single album. I'd love your opinion on this. How would you reconfigure this album if it was to be a single album, bearing in mind the time restraints that vinyl imposes upon us? So it just leaves me to thank you all for engaging with this little exercise. Do click like, subscribe and check that bell to get notified of any future uploads. And if you do appreciate the work that's done here at Classic Album Review, do check out the links below this video for the ways you can support me in this channel. You can become a Patreon or merely check out or like the Facebook page. But other than that, I will say, hope you're all keeping warm, staying safe, and please do keep listening.